All right, we're back here on 1340 WJRW, and happy to welcome into our studio retired Judge Edward Post, and transitioning to a new phase of the law. He's joining the Varnum Grand Haven office, and he's in our studio right now. Judge, appreciate you being in studio to talk a little bit about this transition. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, and congratulations on a long career on the bench. Tell me why you decided to get into the law. Take me way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
Well, way back goes back to college when I just decided that it looked interesting to me, and I decided to be a political science major, and the rest of it sort of fell into place. So I would say it was as much accidental as it was purposeful.
A lot of life is that way. I mean, some opportunities come along, and you make the best of them, and at some point you saw law school and a legal career in your future.
Right. Sometimes I feel a little bit more like a pinball than a rifle shot.
Where did you land in terms of your law career before you got on the bench?
I practiced law in the Grand Rapids area for 15 years, and then the firm I was with opened an office in Grand Haven, so I moved out there and spent 5 years working in Grand Haven when I decided to run for judge.
Gotcha. And then how many years on the bench?
2 years in district court, and followed by 24 years in the circuit court. So a total of 26 years.
Tremendous. Congratulations.
Thank you. I've seen a lot.
I'm sure you have. And I hope most of it is rewarding. When people come before a judge, there's two sides, so somebody's walking away unhappy, right?
Well, hopefully not. Sometimes we can thread the needle, but occasionally that is the case, that someone is disappointed by the result.
Yeah, I mean, I think aren't there always adversaries, or maybe not?
Well, there usually are, and that's why we call it an adversarial system. In fact, even the caption of a case is Smith versus Jones. It's not Smith and Jones, or it's not regarding Smith and Jones. It's Smith versus Jones, and so it's adversarial in nature. Sometimes people reach a compromise position in the course of litigation, but frequently somebody goes away feeling as though they lost, and that's not always what you want.
Okay. Well, and now in your new role at Varnum, some of that threading of the needle is maybe possible because I guess mediation might be one of the areas that you'll focus on?
Right. It's a relatively new area in law, and it's called mediation, and it falls under the umbrella of alternative dispute resolution. The idea being that taking a case all the way through trial may not be the best thing for every case, particularly, for instance, domestic cases, where we pit husband against wife, and they go through a brutal trial, an accusatorial, kind of a bruising trial, and then afterwards they're required to co-parent. It doesn't always work that way.
You're talking about a typical divorce trial, right?
Yeah, we sure are. And if we can find a kinder, gentler way of resolving their disputes and preserving some of that relationship to help them coexist after the divorce is final, that's a good thing. And so mediation in the context of family law is really important. But we use it in all kinds of civil law as well.
I want to focus on the family for just a second because there's always such high emotion in situations like that. And how do you calm the waters?
Right. So most divorce cases exist on two separate planes. One is the emotional plane and one is the financial plane. And what makes sense emotionally makes no sense financially, and vice versa.
Right.
So trying to get folks to become more realistic and have an opportunity. Mediation involves creating an opportunity for people to be heard, so that someone pays attention to what they're saying, and then trying to lead them into a position where they can make their own decisions to resolve cases. But it's a lot better than putting somebody on the witness stand and cross-examining them for hours.
Oh my, yes, and of course, in many cases, I don't know about most, but in many, there's children involved, and that certainly would be on the emotional plane, right?
Right. Divorces with children are particularly good subjects for mediation.
Right.
The whole idea of mediation is you get both parties to agree. You create an environment in which they can both agree. Mediation is not coercive. It's not designed to be coercive. It's to get parties to agree. And if a mediation fails, it's only because the parties could not be put in a position where they agree to a result.
Is it typically offered or suggested in courts?
It's now required in most courts. In our court out in Ottawa County, where I was the chief judge for the last 16 years, we mandated mediation in the last few years in all divorce cases. So you have to go through it.
Uh-huh. And the result was typically better than what you'd seen?
Much better.
Yeah, okay.
Much better. Resulted in many fewer trials and much more economical and fair way to resolve disputes.
And now talk about some of the other uses for mediation besides the family.
Sure. So mediation usually comes at one of three stages, either pre-suit mediation, where the parties with their lawyers agree that before filing a lawsuit they're going to meet with a mediator. Then there's, after a lawsuit is filed, what we call early mediation, and that's before we go through all the discovery process and spend a lot of money and time on the case. We try to get the parties together to try to resolve the case. And then there's eventual settlement mediation that it comes later on in the trial process. So the run-up to a trial is a lengthy and expensive period of time for the parties. If we can avoid that with some early mediation, that's great. If we can't, and discovery runs its course, there still is an opportunity to mediate once all the cards are face up on the table. So business disputes are mediated, family disputes, neighborhood disputes, property line disputes, you name it. If personal injury lawsuits are often mediated. It just gives the parties an opportunity to get in the same room with a skilled mediator to try to get them to reach an agreement.
Gotcha. Can you talk a little bit about the qualities that you develop and use over your period on the bench in this next phase of your legal career?
Sure. On the bench, we're responsible as judges for making sure that there's due process. That is, everybody's had a fair chance to be heard. And that's a big job of the mediator, to make sure that nobody is forced into anything and everybody gets a fair chance to be heard. The second thing, as a judge, I've seen it all. I mean, I've seen thousands of cases as opposed to practicing lawyers who may see hundreds. So that gives me a perspective that is unique, and I know what juries will do, and I know what is the reasonable ballpark range for settling cases, and I can help people get there. So some of those qualities are important. Patience is a really key factor in mediation. There are a lot of folks who come into mediation saying this will never work, and they walk out with an agreement, and so it just takes time sometimes.
I'm drawn to that concept after hearing thousands of cases that you have seen it all, and I wouldn't dispute that. What do you remember the last time you were surprised? Or you just said, "I didn't know we could tackle this"? Was there is there one or two cases that stand out where you say, where at the end of the day, after significant time on the bench, where you said, "I didn't expect that"?
Yeah. So when I say I've seen it all, there's an asterisk behind that. Sure. Because every month there's something new that comes along, and there are I've had very, very complex cases where there are multiple parties that you just never expect would ever be able to resolve a case, for instance, simply because of the number of issues, the number of dollars involved, and the number of people. But you just kind of hack away at it, and you make small incremental moves towards resolution. And then all of a sudden it resolves. And I've had many discussions with my coworkers about, I never thought that case would resolve.
And you use the settled cases as kind of a guidepost along the way?
Where there are lawyers involved, they pretty much know the law. And so sometimes lay people need to be instructed a bit on what the law is, or what the likely outcome would be in the event that they pursued their claims. But having a good idea of what the settled law is and how it applies to the facts is very helpful in mediation.
And tell me about the relationship with Varnum. After retiring from the bench, do they give you a little break on hours? Why this relationship? Why was Varnum attractive to you, and you attractive to Varnum?
Varnum was attractive because they have offices throughout the state of Michigan. So that opens up some business opportunities. You know, people don't really realize that I'm not mediating Varnum's cases. I'm a Varnum lawyer mediating other people's cases. So in Smith versus Jones, they both have their own lawyers, and those lawyers who are required to mediate the case contact me at Varnum to come and do that. So Varnum has the facilities, it has the reputation, it has the locations, and it's just a highly regarded group of skillful lawyers that I have the opportunity to associate with. And
do you have any expectation about how long you might be with Varnum, or is that question open-ended at this point?
It's open-ended, but I intend to make it several years, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay, you must have given some consideration to working on your gardening or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my photography is my real passion.
There you go.
So that would have been but yeah, you can go broke being a photographer in a hurry.
I really appreciate you coming in to talk about this. This is fascinating, and if people are interested in mediation, it's something that they should talk to their attorneys about, and then they'll seek out you. Is that correct?
That's the way it works.
Okay.
So.
Very good. I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you, Dave, for the opportunity.
You bet. This is News Talk 1340, WJRW, and we'll be back in just a moment.